bigger?
In general, me.
That could be taken so many ways on context. We'll let the commentators think about what you're saying now. But we're talking about the UFC. Who is the biggest star? Is it Conor McGregor or is it Ronda Rousey?
Yes.
That is the two that we are pitching head-to-head in this segment, I would say. And I think we both have different opinions, which will be good because I want to hear yours first. So you believe that Ronda Rousey is, but before we even get to that, I want to throw to a video in which Conor McGregor has basically said that Ronda Rousey would kick his ass.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of numbers, who is the pound-for-pound better fighter, you or Ronda?
I mean, I certainly would not like to end up in a tie-up with Miss Rousey. I remember one time when I seen her and I greeted her and said, "What's up, champ?" and we embraced. And I swear on my life, her back muscles were the most solidest back muscles I've ever felt in my life. I thought if this lady was to get a hold of me, she would throw me on my head in literally 1 second flat. So I would not like to engage in a clinch fight with Ronda, but make no mistake about it, I have my ways to win that fight too.
Okay, so it's clear that McGregor has the same mental stability as everyone else, which you understand that Ronda Rousey could probably kick most people's ass.
Right.
Even a talented UFC fighter like him.
The bigger UFC star is Ronda Rousey for one very simple reason. Ask 100 people in the world who Conor McGregor is. And unless they watch the UFC, they will have zero idea. They don't go, "Oh, Conor McGregor, he's definitely a UFC star." No, that's not what they think. Ask 100 people in the world who Ronda Rousey is, I'm going to go with at least 50% plus will say that she's a women's MMA fighter or some combat sport fighter, but also the biggest star in the world as we speak.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor hasn't graced the cover of any magazine. He hasn't graced the cover of Sports Illustrated like Ronda Rousey has over and over again. And Ronda's going into movies, and one of the things I wanted to point out is when she broke the news reporter's ribs.
Oh, yeah.
Conor McGregor did that. That's like a lawsuit. It's assault. They're going to take it out. Ronda Rousey, she gets the pass on it.
Yeah.
So in terms of who the bigger star is, it's Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, I see your point, and I'm going to raise you on another point, because I may agree that she may be the biggest star, and that was the part the purpose of the segment.
But
so
biggest,
I agree with
the
that.
UFC
But
star was
what
the
I'm
question.
going to say, is who is the biggest star? I would say for the UFC. I think that I have to say Conor McGregor because there's one major factor: competition.
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey has yet to face anyone that can last a round with her, basically. You know what I mean?
Last a minute and a half.
Last a minute and a half. 17 seconds knockout is great
Which
for
we
that.
have, with like all opponents I have in common with when they fight Ronda Rousey. I wouldn't last a minute and a half either.
Nice. But yeah, it's good for 15 seconds or 17 seconds, but that's not going to generate enough ticket sales for people to continue to come back because after a while that might get boring. They're not going to get their money's worth. But Conor McGregor, we've just seen how much hype was around his title fight. Now, don't get me wrong, if Conor McGregor loses to Aldo, this conversation goes south again because I'm thinking about it. But just before I finish on this is that McGregor has the ability now he's proven himself against a better opponent, and now we're all going to be looking forward to Aldo. If he beats Aldo, I have no question in saying he'll become the biggest UFC star that we've seen since maybe John Jones or Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
Because McGregor has that value to his personality. Of course, he's sellable, he's charismatic. Ronda Rousey, I want everyone to take this into account as how I'm going to say it. She's a women's UFC fighter. She's the only women's UFC fighter that is of that unbelievable stature right now. She's beaten people with ease.
It's really not wrong to say in terms of the UFC, and again, same thing, take this with a pinch of salt, she's the only women's UFC fighter that actually matters.
Yes.
And that's not anything against Miesha Tate or Cyborg or any of the other popular in terms of UFC women's fighters, but look, you're talking about somebody who's being tossed around right now as one of the most dominant athletes on the planet.
Yeah.
Nobody else comes close to even touching great UFC fighter next to their name in women's MMA. Yet, as of now. But she's paving the way. There might be, down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it would be really interesting to see people get inspired from her.
Yeah, and the question's present time.
Right, and in terms of the UFC, I think you're right about that. If Conor McGregor does beat Jose Aldo, competition-wise, UFC card-wise, I mean, we did just come off the fact that the UFC 189 was the best card we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that included Conor McGregor without fighting Jose Aldo, and it still sold an insane amount of pay-per-view prices. Yeah. But in terms of, I think in terms of who's the bigger star, just star, Ronda Rousey, in terms of who's the bigger UFC star, Conor McGregor.
Yeah,
do the voice.
Conor McGregor.
Yeah,
Conor McGregor. And you must also mention, right, he's from Ireland. He attracts a huge Irish audience. You remember the press conference with Aldo? That place was packed. There was no
Well, I
conference
want to
like
see.
that.
I really want a fight. If he beats Aldo,
Ireland.
or maybe they have against Aldo in Ireland, that would be really
unbelievable.
cool. Or
That would
just
be
the UK in general.
And you made
do
a
it at
good-
Wembley.
Yeah.
Do it outside.
That'd be good.
100,000. Come on.
And you made a good point that I just wanted to talk about in advance on. Is maybe 20 years from now, when our culture becomes more accustomed to women being so dominant in sports, because unfortunately, I need to tell you guys that we can beat around the bush and try not to be sexist here and there, but this culture will always embrace masculinity over a female sport. So
When related
people
to
will
sport,
always
yeah.
buy, when it comes to that, people, I'm talking about an everyday audience, will always go out and buy a ticket for a Conor McGregor fight over a Ronda Rousey fight because they're going to see men beat up each other. Yes, it is interesting for people to see women's UFC, and I'm a fan of the sport now, and I like to see the technical side of it, but I just speak for an everyday persona that McGregor will be the bigger overall star, whilst we are so, I would say, accustomed to seeing men being more dominant in their sport.
What's interesting about these two fighters too, Rousey and McGregor, and then there was a stat that Bleacher Report was thrown out there, so we'll throw to it, amount of strikes faced, defensive, and they're like amazingly similar.
Yeah.
Like time of fights that didn't go the full way, like McGregor was about 6.5 minutes total of fight time, Rousey was like 3.5, so there was a discrepancy, but everything else, almost dead on. It was interesting. I mean, so they're similar from a numbers basis, obviously two completely different fighters.
Well, the final point is like the Women's World Cup just happened. It was a phenomenal tournament to watch. Carly Lloyd was unbelievable.
Carly Lloyd.
But after maybe 2 or 3 weeks, it's no longer circulating in the media. It's no longer something that people will continue to talk about. And I think that when Ronda Rousey's fight's coming up and when she's in on movies like Entourage, yes, she's the hugest star. But I think that when it comes to Conor McGregor, you're still going to be always talking about him when it comes up to his fights and after it. And I just think that's because the UFC, as I said, the men's division is more competitive.
Yeah, from top to bottom, not even close in terms of competition between the men's and women's MMA fighting. But it's interesting because we're talking about this because Rousey fights Bethe Correia.
Are you going to it? I heard it's just a bus trip away.
In the Carson and StubHub Center? Is that where it is?
No, it's in Rio.
We were discussing. We should probably go to this fight. Maybe we can go and cover the fight. Like, where is it? Rio.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll take a trip to the beach.
I would love it.
Be nice, Brazilian woman.
We didn't get to go for the World Cup, which I hated you for.
That's my fault.
I just blamed you for the sake of it.
Makes sense. Yeah. But she's fighting Bethe Correia. We did a little bit about this a month, so we're back when we were talking about Rousey issue keeps blowing up in the media and all that. But in terms of like the fight preview, I don't see that. I think this is going to be a similar vein. I don't think Bethe Correia is the type of fighter who's going to come out there with some crazy awesome strategy. I don't think she can come out fast-paced and beat her. I don't think she can come out and patiently beat her. I don't think there's any way to beat Ronda Rousey. I think, especially watching Ronda Rousey's training in terms of her shadow boxing, in terms of her striking, which is making her reach look different and longer, which is really interesting in my opinion because it's one thing to have your max reach, like as far, like, tail of the tape, how far could you actually get there, and being another way to use speed to find a way to extend that. She seems like Ronda Rousey is 11-0 and about to be 12-0 and get faster, stronger, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Correia go down exactly the same way we've seen other fighters lose, armbar.
Yeah, and that's what you see her working on. You see her working on the shadow boxing. She's trying to adapt to parts of her game that many people will now, as smart fighters will do, try and counteract that. You don't want to come in and leave yourself open to a submission because you're just playing right into Ronda Rousey's hands. So you see her working on this. However, I did want to throw the counterpoint is perhaps she's doing that for the camera, the ways that Floyd Mayweather, as I mentioned, and Pacquiao were throwing different parts of their game into the spotlight so that people are thinking, wow, Floyd Mayweather's working on his power. He's hitting like tires with sledgehammers. Maybe he's going to try and go for a knockout punch. No, he's not. He's still going to fight the way he knows how to fight. Ronda Rousey, yes, she might adapt ways to her game that people think that she needs to adapt to, but the bottom line is she's got something that works, and she knows exactly how to fight within this division, and she knows how to fight to her competitors. So I do agree that you could see this go down for another armbar. If she gets the opportunity, no one has perfected the ability to get out of her submissions yet.
Yeah. By the way, I was trying to sneak into your camera shot with my hand. I couldn't figure out a way to do it. But I did want to quickly rehash on one point between Rousey and McGregor to go back to that for a second. Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston, the first round, first minute knockout, is considered, in retrospect, one of the most famous fights in fighting history, boxing history. People were pissed. People were freaking out of their damn mind, furious when that fight was over in a minute and everyone started screaming, "Get up! What are we paying for? Get up!" And that's such an interesting point with these type of fighters who do submit people in under a minute and 45 seconds. It catches fire. It's really interesting to see. But if she does that 30 times in her career, and she finishes 40-0 in women's MMA history with all of that, we're going to look back and be like, well, where was the fight of the year that we want to see?
Well, the final point to put in it is if women's UFC was as competitive, or it was a division in which she could be the biggest star in the UFC, then why is most of the discussion about her fighting a guy? Because that's why. Because I'm afraid that whilst the competition is so low and whilst she's so dominant over others, unfortunately, again, in our culture, people will try then to relate it back to masculinity and be like, oh, well, we'd like to see her fight a guy then because it's not as exciting enough to see her continually dominate other women in that sport, which, I mean, I still find it fascinating to watch, and I'm still impressed by her, everything that she has to
Screw fighting a man. Go semi-pro, Will Ferrell movie, and fight a bear.
Down. So down
submit a bear?
Who would win, Ronda Rousey or a bear?
I'm going to go with the bear.
Are you really? You just went against Ronda Rousey for the first time ever.
It's got claws.
Even the bear has to wear gloves. You put the gloves on him. Let us know what you guys think. Comment section below. Who is the bigger star for the UFC? Who's the bigger star in general, Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey? Let us know in the comment section below. From Hassan Rubin. Can you start calling yourself Hassan like Hamas? Hassan Rubin 91. Francis _Maxwell.
Francis.
Peace.